Oh my God, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Catherine, and this is Off Topic with Catherine, where stories spill over, lessons get learned, life gets messy, just like it should, and boy, does it ever get messy. Before we start, stiniyasas, everybody, stiniyamas, my Greek coffee, my, which one of the day? Who cares? Doesn't matter. Anyways, welcome to my episode today. I'm really excited to talk to you about something that's a little bit terrifying for all of us, but I've kind of gotten used to it. So that's what I want to share. I'm just looking at my timer because I can ramble on and on and on. So I want to keep it at a 15-minute max. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about change. But before we talk about change, I want to tell you guys a little bit about how my parents have influenced me, at least in the beginning, not anymore, but in the beginning, in regards of my perception to change and how they viewed change. Now, of course, they, came from Greece, fled poverty, and they had to make this change not because of choice, but because of necessity. So because they were forced to do this, they were terrified for their children, for myself, for my brother, to have to make changes that perhaps they viewed as unnecessary. Not just my parents, but of course most of the Greek immigrants that were in the same situation as my parents were. So of course stability was very important. You didn't want to rock the boat. And they didn't want to explore. They didn't want to meet any more challenges. They had enough challenges just having to take that ship and just come over 20 days worth of everything they could have possibly imagined. That was enough for them. Now, that's a big part of how I grew up. So my parents did not necessarily discourage me from wanting to be the person that I felt that I could be, but they didn't necessarily encourage me to sort of go out there and just do whatever it is that I felt I needed to do. And I understand why they did that, of course. I mean, it was just, you get a job, you're doing good, it's stable, you stay there. You just stay there. You meet a person, you're relatively in a decent relationship. There's worse things out there, you stay there. You're living in a home or in a city, in a country. You don't necessarily love it, but you know what? It's okay. That's fine. There's worse things out there. So I would hear this a lot. And for a large part of my life in the beginning, of course, I would sort of find comfort in that and say, yeah, they're right. They're absolutely right. There's worse things out there that are going on. So let me just be very happy with where I'm at and what I have. But there was always something inside me just kind of eating me up and saying, but this is not me. This is not what I want. So I've mentioned this before. When I started working, when I started teaching, I stayed in some places for longer than I did in others, but I always had this need to leave after a certain amount of time and explore other places, other opportunities, other possibilities, even though I knew there was a lot of instability there and perhaps maybe no stability. And I just kind of made it work. It wasn't easy, but I made it work. So after I did that for like 3-4 times, it just became easier for me. And it's not because I wasn't terrified deep down inside, but I just felt that I just couldn't be in a place anymore. Now, I cannot tell you how many times I felt this fear, but it was this discomfort, actually, I should say. But at the same time, there was a feeling of excitement, a feeling of let's see what's out there. Now, I also worked in places where I met colleagues. This is not specific to work, but just giving you an example, that were in the same place for like 40 years, and they were happy. They were really happy. And if you're happy, hey, great. But what I felt is that, I felt that they only grew so much. You can only grow so much by being in a place. And I would ask them often, didn't you ever want to go try another place? And their response to that was, why would we want to do that? We're comfortable, we're secure. Why would we want to do that? And that was perfectly fine. I hear that, I understand that, but that's not something that worked for me. Now I needed to discover something new, whatever that new was. It was something that would perhaps make all this uneasiness come out. Yes, but I met new people this way. I experienced things that I would have never experienced had I stayed in those places. So that's a little bit about work. Now I know, we can go a little bit further with that and sort of change direction. I have a very, very good friend that I was out to lunch with the other day, and she shared something with me which I didn't know. But she says to me, Catherine, she's not from here originally. She says, the first time I came here, and I came to, I landed here in Montreal, in Canada, in Montreal. She says, it was the first time where I actually had my arms exposed. Like, I don't know if it was her whole arm or I don't know what. And she said, and I felt like everybody was looking at me. I had this feeling of, I was so scared and I felt so uncomfortable. I said, oh my gosh, really? She says, yes. And, I realized after a while that nobody was looking at me. Nobody really cared about me. But, for her, just the way she felt internally was shocking. It really surprised me. And then she said to me, because we had gone several years ago to get a haircut, and she cut her hair quite short and she looked great. But during the whole time that she was sitting at the salon, she would say, okay, I have to take a deep breath. Wait. And I said, are you okay? And she says, no, I mean, this is such a big change for me. Her hair, the fact that she was cutting her hair a little bit shorter, and it was not short, but it was shorter. It just terrified her. It was such a big change for her. And I said, oh my, I'm sorry, I just didn't realize. And so, little changes like that. And of course, when we want to take those steps, it's important that we remember that for some of us, we can make, sudden huge changes. But for others, it's important to take those baby steps, whatever it is that you want to do. But make those little baby steps, because it could be very traumatic. I have people that have moved from one country to the next in a matter of weeks, and the very little planning. But they've told me that, what, I don't care about the uncertainty. I don't care what it is that I'm met with there. I just want to go. I need this huge change, and I want to make it right now. And they do it. And then whatever they're met with on the other side of the world, they'll deal with it. So there's folks like that too. And I have very close friends that are like that too. I have a dear friend right now who's picking up. This friend of mine has 2 children, and he's picking up and spending a year in another part of the world with his 2 children, just so they can discover that part of the world. His children have never been there. And I said, oh my golly, how do they feel about that? He says, well, we don't know. We'll see when we're there, but we're just going to do it. That's not for everybody. It's so unfamiliar. I mean, the unfamiliar is terrifying. And I do understand that, it's easier to be in a place or stay in a situation, even though we know it's not the right situation for us. It's easier to stay than to go. And that's That's something that I learned a long time ago, and also having conversations with many different people. And, I'll often ask, why are you in this, or why are you not making the change that perhaps would be better for you? And their answer most times is, because at least I know where I'm in now. At least I know what's happening now. At least I'm very familiar with what I'm living. Whereas if I were to make that change, it's so scary for me, and I don't know where I'll be. And this is the case for most people, and I do understand that. But I think at least I can speak for myself, and that's why I'm saying I think once we start making those little steps to move towards perhaps something that aligns more with who we are and what we'd like in our lives, eventually it becomes a little bit easier. And there's a little quote that I always share with my friends, and it's, "Hello, fear. Thank you for being here." And the reason I'm saying that is because when we're afraid, that's such a real, really, a feeling, or an emotion, a feeling, that sometimes that's when we want to push ourselves to go into the unknown. But again, we have to be okay with that, and not everybody is okay with that. So I understand why we want to choose familiarity. And look, it's the same thing. I worked with children my entire life, and when we would change classrooms. So, for example, a child would move up in a classroom. They were terrified. I mean, they would cling on to the teacher that they knew for a very long time. And so were the parents. Oh my golly, you saw not only the children terrified, but the parents as well. What's this other classroom like? What's this other teacher like? What if, we're not comfortable? What if we don't like the way they teach, and so on and so forth? And we would often say, it takes some time. Give your child some time. Give yourself some time. And they were always fine. It always worked out. Maybe it wasn't the same teacher. They didn't teach the same way. Naturally, they weren't the same person. But they adapted, and they found ways to work through it. And that's what I want to say to everybody today, that, I don't know, think about it, is staying in a familiar situation, whatever it is, if you're not feeling entirely okay with it. I'm not saying take risks where you fall into massive poverty. That's not, or you're going to be in a dangerous situation. That's not what I'm saying. Put yourself out there and in a risky situation. But what I am saying is that perhaps trying to discover things about yourself that you might not realize that you can do, right? So that's a little bit about sharing the fear of change, and change altogether, whether it's our hair, our clothes, our living situation, our friends, our family. Just find a little balance there. Now, thank you for joining me today. And today's coffee, Greek coffee wisdom is this: whether you're someone who runs towards change, who avoids it, or hides from it, just remember that change is a part of our lives, and it affects us all one way or the other. And sometimes we just need to, just embrace it and realize that as scary as it might seem initially, sometimes we'll come on the other side saying, I'm so glad that this happened, because had that not happened, I wouldn't be where I am today, wherever that is. Now, thanks again for joining me in my episode and my podcast today. And just remember, that life's a little better when you go off topic. Thank you.